Chapter 4, The Principles of Design. Define the concepts of unity and variety in works of art. Differentiate between symmetrical and asymmetrical design. Describe how artists use emphasis and subordination to direct the attention of viewers. Identify directional forces in a work of art and explain how artists use them. Discuss how artists use repetition and rhythm in their designs. Explain how scale and proportion affect our interpretation of works of art. Illustrate how Matisse used the principles of design to change the composition of large reclining nude. Introduction. We have the process of creation, where you have to choose visual elements, which ones to use, and organize the elements to convey the artist's intentions. The composition is an organization of the elements in 2D arts. Design is the process of organizing visual elements and the product of that process. Charles Demuth, I saw the figure 5 in gold, used important principles of design. It uses unity and the repeated fives, which draw the viewer's eye deeper into the painting. It has variety of colors. You have gold and red and gray and black. We have size changes. And for the balance, it is asymmetrical. Unity and variety, complementary concerns at the opposite ends of a spectrum. With unity, you have the appearance or condition of oneness. Very few artworks are absolutely unified. This is John McCracken's Untitled, which is close to homogeneous, has that continuous yellow color. Almost boring. Here we have variety. It provides diversity and it acts to counter unity. In Sarah Z's Triple Point, we have an example of extreme variety, and it looks varied enough to seem chaotic, but the artist introduces orderly elements. Too much unity can be boring. In Jacob Lawrence's Going Home, he balances unity and variety with abstract figures, objects, and color themes. He establishes visual themes, and he repeats and varies those themes. Variety provides diversity. In Peter de Hoogh's Interior of a Dutch House, he balances unity and variety through different means. Action is enclosed all in one room. It's not overly crowded. His liberal use of squares and rectangles. Repetition is an organizing principle in the floor tiles. He provides a structure that promotes unity. De Hoogh offsets the figure grouping in the left foreground with the single figure on the right. Standing before the massive fireplace and dark painting that fill the right background, the single figure has a visual weight needed to create asymmetrical balance. Balance is an achievement of equilibrium. Acting influence are held in check by opposing forces. In art, there is a desire for visual balance. It's achieved through symmetry or asymmetry. Symmetrical balance is near or exact matching of a left and right side of a three-dimensional form or a two-dimensional composition. Architects often employ symmetry. In James Hoban, Design for the President's House, we have symmetry, and it's often used in architecture to give a building grandeur and formal structure. The facade of the White House appears evenly balanced by two wings that flank the columned portico, which further highlights the entryway at the building's center. Symmetry suggests stability and permanence. Here we have symmetrical balance. It's useful in architecture. It's easier to comprehend than asymmetry. Symmetry imposes balanced unity. It's less desirable in sculpture and two-dimensional art. Few works are perfectly symmetrical. This is Damien Hirst's Posterity, The Holy Place. And if you look closely, those are all butterflies. One example of perfect symmetry here, we have warm colors that are heavier than cool colors. Asymmetrical balance, we have the left and right sides are not the same. We have various elements that are balanced. It's around a felt or implied center of gravity. It's where you get asymmetrical balance. Lavinia Fontana's Noli Me Tangere has dramatic imbalances that are held in check. There's a strong weight in the center of the composition. Christ is in the foreground that's balanced by a massive tomb. Here is asymmetrical balance in Titian's Noli Me Tangere. There's a more subtle approach than Fontana's. We have a weight that's closer to being even on each side. It's more symmetrical. It has an effortless quality of good asymmetrical balance. In Titian's Noli Me Tangere, the interactions of the central figures create a focal point. Here we have Degas' Jockeys Before the Race. We have an extreme case of dynamic balancing. The center of gravity is on the right. Solitary circle on the left leads the viewer's eyes through warm colors. Marc de Suvier's Declaration is an example of a statue requiring balance to stand up. Balance is used for structural purposes in 3D work. Long-standing public art is proven safe in earthquakes and tsunamis. Engineering is balanced along V-shaped wings. Balance refers to how artists arrange visual elements to create a sense of equilibrium. Balancing involves consideration of the visual weight of shapes and colors in painting, but sculptors like Marc de Suviero must also consider structural balance to ensure work stability and safety over time. Emphasis is used to draw attention to an area, which is a specific spot or figure that is the focal point. There are various ways to create emphasis. It can be through position, contrast, juxtaposition of strongly dissimilar elements, color intensity, or size. Here we have Goya's 3rd of May, and the emphasis is created by the color, definitely, the position, the guns pointing at the guy in the white shirt. So we have a big contrast of light and dark as well. Subordination creates neutral areas of lesser interest. It keeps the viewer from being distracted. It's at work in Titian's Noli Me Tangere, also in Degas' Jockey Before the Race. Directional forces, artists use them to influence the way we look at a work of art. It gives us paths for the eyes to follow. It's provided by actual or implied lines. It's implied by a form's axis or connection between similar or adjacent forms or lines. Returning to Degas' Jockeys, we have a series of focal points, and diagonal directional forces are created by bodies of the 3 receding horses. Goya has placed the bullfighter on the intersection of the diagonal axis to create motion. We have sensations that are produced by direction of lines. Standing still are verticals, being at rest would be the horizontals, and being in motion are diagonals. Francisco Goya's bullfight, we have drama that's produced by large, isolated, dark focal shapes, which creates contrast. There's suspense of spectators in the corner. Horizontal and vertical lines give the composition stability. Repetition, we have a regular recurrence of visual elements that lends unity, continuity, flow, and emphasis. Pattern is an all-over design created by the repetitive ordering of elements. It's a common design strategy in textile art traditions. Here we have the Afghan weavers, where we have a pattern that's created any form or design element when it's repeated in an organized way We often think of abstract patterning created with lines, shapes, and colors, but representational figures or forms may also be used to form a decorative pattern or design surface. So we have repeated cars and helicopters, hand grenades. Rhythm is any kind of movement or structure of dominant and subordinate sequence. It's created in visual arts through regular recurrence of elements with related variations. Often it's used as an organizational and expressive device. Rhythm is the simplest way to create it is by repetition. We have Wallace Berman's Untitled Collage. It's reproduced shape exactly. So we have the 4 squares and it's varied exposure each time, and it's anchored composition with rhythm of the hands. Ogata Korin's cranes, we have both repetition and rhythm. It's a simplified repeated pattern of birds. The direction of the bird's heads leads your eyes to the left and balances the shape on the right. Repetition refers to one object or shape that's repeated. Pattern is a combination of elements or shapes repeated in a recurring and regular arrangement. Rhythm is a combination of elements repeated, but with variations. Scale is the size relation of one thing to another. How big will the work be? Proportion, the size relationship of parts to a whole. Scale relationships in the diagram, the inner circles are the same size but appear differently depending on the surrounding circle size. Many artists have distorted size for visual effect. The size of the cross draws attention to the lack of importance many people give to Southern Hemisphere countries. The small work that can be overlooked just as easily as news from South America. A person typically experiences scale in relation to the size of his or her body. In Cildo Morelos' Cruzeiro do Sol, we have less than a ½ inch across. We have material that represents a lumber product. Commentary, it's a commentary on the Southern Hemisphere countries and their exports. Photographs of Morelos' sculpture often includes a hand in order to call attention to their extremely small scale. Scale is commonly understood in relationship to the body since humans have an innate understanding of our physical size. Claes Oldenburg and Kostje van Bruggen's shuttlecocks. There are 4 huge outlandish shuttlecocks outside of this museum in Missouri. It's exaggerated scale pokes fun at the museum's practices. Each are 18 feet high and they weigh over 5,000 pounds. So they gently mock the solemnity of the museum they surround. Claes Oldenburg and Kostje van Bruggen have distorted scale. It's a huge shuttlecock. Oldenburg wanted to demystify art. He mixed it with real life in new ways. He exploited distortions of scale. He frequently enlarged the scale, which helps viewers to see them afresh. He married the art historian Van Bruggen and became collaborators until Oldenburg's death. Here is one of his big soft sculptures. Proportion and composition. A change in proportion can make a major difference in how we experience a given subject. Format. The format an artist chooses strongly influences the total composition of a particular work. Format refers to a size and shape of a 2D picture plane. Vertical 8.5 by 11 rectangle, like a piece of computer paper, a digital screen. It strongly influences the total composition of a work. Proportion and composition. We have a change in proportion can make a difference in a viewer's experience of a subject. We have the 2 pietas. On the left, we have Michelangelo's Pietà. We have a problem here of the human proportion. It looks natural, but Mary would be a giant if she stood up, and is showing a grown man on his mother's lap. Mary's body is made immense but overlooked due to Christ's proportions. In the Roentgen Pietà, both figures are the same size, but Christ is made bony and emaciated. The disproportion of figures adds to the visual expressive effect. Okay, design summary. Design is not inevitable and may result from multiple changes in decisions. This is the progression of Large Reclining Nude by Matisse. There are 24 photographs that he took over 4 months. In state 1, we have the most naturalistic, and there are traditional rules of picture construction being followed. Progression of the Large Reclining Nude state, what would that be, 9? Figures enlarged, weighted right arm has both a bold addition of parallel stripes. In state 13, on the right, we have the figure's head is larger and more upright, with simplified curves of the torso. The net-like motif of squares is on the couch and wall. And then we have a progression to the final version. The left arm extends to align with the picture frame. The figure's head is smaller. New functions to shapes and lines of the chair back and flowers. There's an intensified pattern on the back wall. The expressiveness of work is not reliant on the facial expressions or gestures of figures. It is also reliant on composition. So movement of the right leg down creates a directional force in this version. And then the net-like patterns in the background give rhythm and repetition, and it reduces the downward directional force. That's all.